I was in the kitchen preparing the children's lunch when my cell phone rang. It was him. We hadn't spoken in almost 3 months, and when I answered, the first thing I heard was, "You turned the children against me." I stood there, bread knife in hand, trying to process what I just heard. I owed $37,000 in back child support. $37,000. And he had the nerve to call me and tell me I was the problem. I took a deep breath, looked at my children playing in the living room, and said, more calmly than I thought I didn't turn anyone against you. They ask why you don't send money, why I can't buy new sneakers, why we can't go to a friend's birthday party because we don't have presents. And I don't know what else to say. He was silent for a few seconds and then dropped the bombshell. I can't pay. You know I'm struggling. I almost laughed. I'd seen his photos on Instagram. Trips to the beach, beers with friends, a new car. But he didn't have a penny for child support. Struggling? You struggle to pay $37,000, but you don't struggle to travel, to go out, to live like you don't have kids. He changed the subject, said I was being unfair, that he didn't understand her situation, and then came the low blow. You're doing this on purpose. You want people to hate me. I hung up, not out of anger, out of exhaustion, because I no longer had the energy to argue with a man who had chosen to evade responsibility and continued to play the victim. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling. $37,000. 3 years of back child support, 3 years of managing on my own, working double shifts, cutting out everything unnecessary, explaining to my children why we couldn't have what everyone else had. And he thought the problem was me, that I was turning the children against him, as if he needed to. As if they didn't realize on their own that their father had disappeared, that he didn't care, that he didn't send money, that he didn't show up for birthday parties, school meetings, on tough days. My eldest daughter came into the kitchen and asked, "Mommy, was that Daddy?" I quickly wiped my face, trying to hide the fact that I was about to cry, and said yes. Is he going to send the money? My heart broke, because she was 9 years old and she already knew. She already understood that we were struggling, that her father owed money, that I was juggling the bills. I don't know, sweetheart, but we'll work it out. We always do. She hugged me with that tight hug and went back into the living room, and I stayed there alone in the kitchen, staring at the overdue electricity bill on the refrigerator, the empty bank statement, and I thought, how long am I going to endure this alone? It was then that I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait any longer for him to realize it. I wasn't going to believe any more promises. I was going to go after what was rightfully mine. My children's rights. The next day, I called the lawyer and asked him to file a child support lawsuit. Civil imprisonment, lien, freeze accounts, everything the law allowed. Because if he thought I'd turned the children against him, now he was going to see what it truly meant to fight. And when I hung up the phone with the lawyer confirming he was going to file the lawsuit, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that justice would finally be served, and that he would pay. One way or another, he would pay. If you're watching this, and you've already heard the accusation that you turned the children against their father because he doesn't pay child support, please like this post, because this story needs to be told, and you should know that you're not alone in this unfair fight. It wasn't always like this. When we separated 3 years ago, he promised he would take responsibility, that he would pay child support properly, that he would be present in the children's lives. For the first 2 months, he even paid. He deposited the money on time, called to talk to them. I even thought everything would be all right, that we would manage to be civil, to have a mature separation. But in the 3rd month, the deposit was late, then it didn't arrive. And when I asked about it, he said there was an unforeseen problem, that he would deposit it the following week. I believed him, because I still hoped it would be something decent. The next week turned into a month. The month turned into 2. And suddenly, I was on my own paying for everything. Rent, school, food, clothes, medicine, everything. I worked all day, came home exhausted, and still had to take care of dinner, homework, baths, bedtime stories. I had no free weekends. I had no one to share the burden with. And every time I called for money, she had a different excuse. I'm unemployed. I'm struggling. You don't understand my situation. But I saw her social media. I saw pictures at bars, concerts, trips, and I wondered, how does she have money for all that, but not for her own children? It was around that time that I truly began to feel his weight. It wasn't just physical exhaustion. It was a profound emotional drain, a growing anger inside me, mixed with frustration, with a sense of injustice. Because I was there, giving up everything, sacrificing myself, and he lived as if he had no responsibilities whatsoever. The children started asking about him. Mom, why doesn't Dad come to pick us up anymore? Why doesn't he call? And I didn't know what to answer. I didn't want to speak ill of him. I didn't want to poison their hearts. But I couldn't make up any more excuses either. One day, my youngest daughter, who was 5 at the time, asked me if her dad didn't love her anymore. I was driving home from school, and when I heard that, I had to pull over. I turned to her, took her little hand, and said, "He does love you. He's just confused right now, but it has nothing to do with you, okay?" She looked at me with those big, questioning eyes and said, "Then why doesn't he come around?" I didn't know what to say. I held back my tears, got back in the car, and when I got home, I locked myself in the bathroom and broke down. Because it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to them. It wasn't fair to me. Months passed and the debt kept growing. $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $37,000. And I was trying to survive, juggling credit cards, asking for rent extensions, buying the cheapest things I could. The children were growing up without being able to do extracurricular activities because I couldn't afford them. Without being able to go to the movies, the amusement park, or my friends' parties. And every time they asked, why? I felt a stab in the back because I knew the reason. And the reason had a name, but I swallowed my anger, took a deep breath, and said, "Not now, my love, but someday we'll make it." But I didn't know if that day would ever come. After 3 years of handling everything on my own, I finally made the decision I should have made much sooner. I made an appointment with a lawyer. I brought all the evidence I had, his messages promising to pay, screenshots of conversations where he lied about being broke, bank statements showing he hadn't made any deposits, photos from his social media of him enjoying life. I put everything in a folder and left. When I sat down in front of the lawyer and told him the whole story, he shook his head and said, "You've waited too long, but there's still a lot that can be done. And he'll have to answer for it." The lawyer explained that with a debt of $37,000, it was possible to request enforcement of the child support payments, civil imprisonment, seizure of assets, garnishment of wages if he had a registered job. I listened to all of that with my heart racing. Part of me felt guilty. Guilty for dragging the father of my children into this situation. But another part, the part that had spent 3 years carrying it all alone, felt relieved. Because finally someone was going to make him pay, not just financially, but to pay for his irresponsibility, for the abandonment, for making his own daughters feel rejected. I signed the papers that same day. 2 weeks later, he was summoned and his phone blew up. He called about 10 times in a row. He sent message after message. "Seriously? You're gonna send me to jail?" I read every message with a serenity I didn't know I possessed. And then I replied, "You had 3 years to do the right thing. 3 years, and you chose to ignore it. Now it's not about you and me anymore. It's about you and justice." He tried to convince me to give up. He promised he would pay, that he would find a way, but I'd heard those promises before, and I wasn't going to fall for it again. The process moved quickly. The judge gave him 15 days to pay at least part of the debt or provide an explanation. And during those 15 days, my cell phone didn't stop ringing. It was him, it was his family, it was people I barely knew trying to convince me to drop the lawsuit, saying I was being cruel, that I couldn't allow it, that I was going to ruin his life. And you know what I did? I hung up. I blocked them, because no one had called me when I was struggling. No one had offered me help when I couldn't pay the electricity bill. No one had asked how the children were. But now that he was at risk of being arrested, they all came to his defense. On the last day of the deadline, he didn't pay. He offered no explanation. He simply ignored it. And the judge issued an arrest warrant. When the lawyer called to inform me, I felt a mixture of victory and sadness. Victory because he was finally going to be held accountable. Sadness because it had come to this. Because he had chosen this. He had chosen to let the debt reach this absurd amount. He had chosen not to respond when there was still time. And now the consequences were coming. That night, I looked at my sleeping daughters and thought, I did the right thing. Not for me, for them, because they deserve a father who takes responsibility. And if he won't do it out of love, he'll do it out of fear of jail. While the legal process was underway, my life didn't stop. I still had to work, take care of the children, and keep the house running. But the stress began to consume me in an unexpected way. I would wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, thinking about all the possibilities. What if he managed to escape from jail? What if he disappeared forever and I never saw that money? What if his family came after me? I couldn't switch off. I spent all day on autopilot, operating in survival mode, but inside I was falling apart. My body started giving clear signs that I was at my limit. Constant headaches that wouldn't go away with medication. Chest pain that made me think I was having a heart attack. Severe insomnia. I'd lie staring at the ceiling until 3 or 4 in the morning, and when I finally fell asleep, the alarm would go off. I'd get up exhausted, make breakfast for the kids, take them to school, go to work, and repeat the whole process. One day, I was in a work meeting and I froze. I forgot what I was going to say. I just stared at the computer, unable to process anything. My boss noticed and asked if I was okay. I said yes, but no, I was far from okay. The guilt came back stronger than ever. Guilt for putting my daughter's father in this situation. Guilt for having to deal with it. Guilt for not being able to hide my stress from them. Because no matter how hard I tried to pretend everything was fine, they could tell. My oldest daughter started getting quieter, more withdrawn. She stopped telling me about school. And when I asked her what had happened, she would just shrug and say, nothing. I knew it was nothing. I knew she was feeling the weight of it all, and it was destroying me because all I wanted was to protect them, but I was failing. One night I lost my temper. It was over something silly. My little girl spilled her juice on the table and I just screamed. I screamed so loud I even scared myself. She started crying and I realized what I'd done. I knelt down, hugged her, and tearfully apologized. Mommy didn't mean to scream. Mommy's really tired. She hugged me back, wiped my tears, and said, "Don't worry, Mommy, I love you." And that broke my heart. Because she was 6 years old, and she was already comforting me. She was already noticing I was falling apart. And I felt like the worst mother in the world. The next day, I called my neighbor, the only person who had truly helped me all these years, and I poured my heart out to her. I told her everything, the process, the stress, the guilt, the exhaustion. She listened in silence and then said something I needed to hear. "You're not a superhero. You've been carrying the weight of 2 people alone for 3 years. It's normal to be at your limit, but you need to take care of yourself. Because if you collapse, who will take care of them?" She was right. I needed to breathe. I needed to ask for help. I needed to accept that I couldn't do it all alone all the time. And that's when I began to understand. Fighting for my rights was important. But surviving was too. Comment below if you've ever felt like you were going to fall apart in the middle of a struggle. If you've ever exploded with exhaustion in front of your children and then felt terrible. Because we need to talk about this. About the unseen side of being a single mother. I was having one of my worst weeks. The legal process was dragging on. He hadn't been arrested yet because he was appealing everything, and I still hadn't seen a penny. The electricity bill was already accruing interest, my credit card was maxed out, and I just found out my eldest daughter needed braces. Another expense I didn't know how I was going to pay. I arrived home that Friday completely defeated. I left the groceries in the kitchen, sat down on the floor, and lay there staring at the ceiling, trying not to collapse. That's when my youngest daughter came into the kitchen. She had just arrived home from school, still wearing her backpack. She looked down at me and asked, "Mom, are you sad?" I tried to smile, but I couldn't. I just shook my head. She took off her backpack, came over, and sat on my lap. She hugged me with that tight hug only children give, with all her might, as if she wanted to take all my sadness away. And she stayed there, silent, just holding me. She didn't say anything. She didn't ask anything. She just stayed. I hugged her tightly and began to cry. It wasn't a cry of despair. It was a cry of relief, of gratitude, of remembering why I was doing all this, why I woke up every day even when I was exhausted, why I fought in court even knowing it would be draining. Because I had that there. I had her sister. I had their love, their trust, the certainty that no matter what happened, they knew I was there, always. And in that hug, I found strength again. Not much, but enough to get up. That night, after putting them both to bed, I watched them in their room. My older daughter was asleep, clutching her old baby teddy bear. The little one was snoring softly, her tiny hand tucked under her pillow. And I thought about everything they had been through. All the times I had to say no to them. All the parties they missed because they didn't have enough money. All the times they missed their father and I didn't know what to say. But I also thought about everything we had accomplished. They were healthy. They were happy despite everything. They were kind, loving, strong. And all of that was thanks to me. I picked up my phone and opened the old photos. I saw a picture of them as babies, back when their father and I were still together. I was smiling in that picture, holding them both in my lap, thinking we'd be a family forever. And I looked at the current photo of the 3 of us taken the previous Sunday. I looked tired in the picture, with dark circles under my eyes, my hair haphazardly pulled back. But they were laughing, hugging me, happy, and I realized the family still existed. It had just changed shape. And no matter how much it hurt, no matter how difficult it was, we survived. And more than that, we grew together, and no one could take that away from us. 4 months after filing the lawsuit, I received the call I'd been waiting for. It was the lawyer. We did it. His voice sounded excited. They've frozen his account, and we managed to repossess part of the car. He's going to have to pay. I sat down slowly in my office chair, my hand trembling as I held the phone. How much? He paused and said, $15,000 is already secured. We'll collect the rest little by little, but he won't get away with it this time. I hung up and sat there processing it. $15,000, it wasn't everything, but it was something. It was the first time in 3 years that I'd seen a concrete result. 2 days later, the money was in my account. I opened the bank app early that morning, still in bed, and when I saw the amount, I burst into tears. I cried so much that my daughters woke up startled and came running to ask what had happened. I hugged them both, still crying, and said, "Mommy won, girls. We won." They didn't quite understand what I was saying, but they smiled. And I felt for the first time in a long time that things were going to get better, that I had done the right thing, that fighting had been worth it. The first thing I did was pay the overdue bills. The electricity bill, which had a disconnection notice. The rent, for which I'd negotiated a payment plan. The credit card bill, which was suffocating me with interest. I paid them one by one, and each bill I paid felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Then I went to the supermarket and, for the first time in years, I didn't count a penny. I bought real fruit. I bought good meat. I bought that yogurt my daughters loved, but that I never bought because it was expensive. And when I got home with the bags full, my eldest daughter looked at me and asked, "Is it someone's birthday?" I laughed with tears in my eyes and said, "No, honey, it's just because we deserve it." Last weekend, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I took them to the amusement park. I bought tickets, popcorn, and let them play with all the rides they wanted. And seeing their smiles, the pure joy in their eyes, was worth every second of effort. My youngest daughter came running after getting off the carousel and yelled, "Mommy, again." Again. And I said yes. I said yes to everything that day. Because we deserved it. After so much hardship, so much sacrifice, so much pain, we finally deserved a good day. When we got home that night, they went to bed exhausted but happy, and I sat on the sofa staring at the bank statement, the balance I still had left after paying everything. And I thought, this is just the beginning, because I still owed $22,000. But I had proven that it was possible to win, that justice, however slowly, was coming, and that he wouldn't get away with it. He was going to have to pay every penny. And in the meantime, I was going to rebuild my daughter's lives, one victory at a time, one smile at a time, because we had made it through the worst, and now at last, we were living again. With the arrival of my pension and the bills finally paid, my life became a little more bearable. It wasn't abundance, far from it, but stability. And it was precisely in that calm that a strange feeling came over me, an unexpected emptiness. I had spent 3 whole years in survival mode. Wake up, work, take care of the children, go to court, sleep, and repeat. I had no time for anything else. I had no space to think about myself. But now that things were less chaotic, I realized something terrifying. I had completely forgotten who I was, other than a mother. One night, I put the girls to bed, sat on the sofa, and lay there in silence. Absolute silence. No one was calling, no bills were due, no urgent matters awaited me, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I turned on the television, but I couldn't concentrate. I picked up my phone and saw photos of friends going out, traveling, living, and I realized that I hadn't had a social life in years. I no longer had close friends. I didn't go out. I didn't dress up. I didn't feel like a woman. I only worried about my role, mother, worker, warrior, as everyone liked to say. But what had happened to the woman who existed before all of that? Where had she gone? I went to the bathroom mirror and looked at myself closely. I hadn't cut my hair in months. My roots were showing. My clothes were baggy, uninspired, chosen only for practicality. My body was tired, my skin lifeless. I was 34, but I looked 50. And the worst part, I didn't care. Or rather, I had stopped caring because I had no time, money, or energy. But now, looking at that woman in the mirror, I felt a deep sadness, because I had let her die little by little, and I hadn't even realized it. I started missing things I didn't even know I missed. I missed having a deep conversation with someone that wasn't about the kids. I missed feeling beautiful. I missed someone looking at me as a woman, not as the poor single mom. And then the guilt hit. The same damn guilt as always. Guilt for wanting more than just my daughters. Guilt for thinking about myself. As if I didn't have the right to want companionship, affection, romance. As if being a mother meant giving up everything that made me human. But the truth is, I missed it, and pretending I didn't just consumed me more. I decided to start small. I got a haircut at the salon. I spent some of my spare money on a manicure. I bought some new clothes, nothing expensive, but something that made me feel good. And when I looked at myself in the mirror again, I saw a glimpse of the woman I used to be. I wasn't the same. I had changed. I had scars, worry lines, eyes that had seen too much. But I was still me, and I still existed. That night, as I lay in bed, I hugged my pillow and thought, I can be a mother and still be a woman. Both can coexist. I just need to give myself permission. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Because I had remembered that, beneath all that warrior armor, there was still a person. And she, too, deserved care. If this story resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in this loneliness of forgetting who you are beyond being a mother, subscribe to the channel. Because there's still so much more to tell about this journey. And I want you to join me until the end. After I started taking better care of myself, something shifted in my mindset. I realized I no longer wanted to simply react. I didn't want to constantly be putting out fires, chasing losses, waiting for the next problem to appear. I wanted to build something. I wanted my daughters to grow up seeing a mother who not only survived, but who planned, who dreamed, who had goals. And to do that, I needed to stop living in despair and start truly organizing my life. One Sunday evening, after the girls had gone to sleep, I sat down and did something I'd never done before. I made a real financial plan. I took a notebook and wrote down everything that came in, my salary plus the pension that was finally arriving. Then I wrote down everything that went out, rent, school, food, transportation, bills. And for the first time, I saw clearly where the money was going. I saw that I was spending too much on takeout on days when I was too exhausted to cook. I saw that I was buying unnecessary things when I was emotionally distressed, as if consumption filled the void. And I saw that if I eliminated those excesses, I might have some money left over. Not much, but some. In the following months, I put the plan into action. I stopped ordering takeout. I started cooking on Sundays every day of the week, even when I was tired. I canceled streaming services I wasn't even using. I switched brands at the supermarket, bought generic products, and took advantage of sales. And at the end of the first month, I had $200 left over. $200 that I put into a separate account. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of an emergency fund, because I didn't want to go through the terror of not knowing how I was going to pay an unexpected bill again. I didn't want to live on the edge of survival anymore. With a clearer mind, I started thinking about my professional growth. I'd been in the same job for years, earning the same salary, with no prospects. I started looking for free online courses in my field. I signed up for one on project management. I studied in the early hours of the morning, after the girls had gone to bed, with a strong coffee by my side. It was exhausting, but an investment. And after 3 months, I updated my resume and started sending it to other companies. It wasn't about leaving the job that was supporting me. It was about having options, about not getting stuck in a bad situation just because I was afraid to take a risk. 2 months later, I received an offer. It wasn't my dream job, but it was a 30% higher salary with better benefits. I accepted, trembling with fear and excitement. On my last day at my old job, I looked back and saw that everything had changed. 3 years ago, I was a broken and abandoned woman, not knowing how I was going to raise my 2 daughters alone. And now I was here, with the bills paid, money saved, a better job, and a lawsuit won. It wasn't perfect. There was still a fight. I still had to get the rest of the alimony back. But it was progress. It was evolution. It was proof that I had decided not to give up. And when I got home that night, I hugged my daughters and whispered, "We're building something, girls. Slowly, but we're doing it. And no one is going to take it away from us." Everything was fine. A new job, finances in order, the girls were doing well. Life was finally falling into place. Until one Tuesday night, the phone rang. It was him. We hadn't spoken in almost 6 months, not since his account was blocked, and he had to pay the first $15,000. My heart was racing, and I answered not knowing what to expect. And the first thing he said was, "We need to talk." About the girls. I took a deep breath and replied curtly, "Go ahead." It started with that victim act I knew so well. She said she was having a hard time because her account had been blocked, that she'd lost her car, that she was living with her mother, that it was all my fault for having exaggerated the lawsuit. I listened in silence, feeling her anger slowly rising, and then she dropped the bombshell. "You have to stop this. Withdraw the rest of the foreclosure. I promise I'll pay little by little, but on my own terms. And another thing, you turn the girls against me. They don't even want to talk to me anymore." I closed my eyes, counted to 5, and replied, "You still owe $22,000, $22,000, and you think I'm going to drop the lawsuit because you're struggling. Do you know how many times I've had problems these past 3 years? How many times I didn't have enough money for decent food? How many times I had to choose between paying the electricity bill or buying medicine? And where were you? Posting pictures of barbecues, the beach, drinking beers with your friends. So don't come here talking to me about hardship." His voice hardened. "You're vindictive. You just want to destroy me." I almost laughed. "No, I just want what's rightfully your daughter's. And if you had paid from the beginning, we wouldn't be here." Then he changed tactics. He started talking about the girls. He said they didn't answer his calls, that they turned away when he showed up, that he'd turned them against him, and that made me explode. "Do you know why they don't want to talk to you? Because you disappeared. Because you promised to pick them up and you didn't show up. Because you didn't even send a text on your youngest daughter's birthday. Because they spent years asking, 'Where's daddy?' And I got no answer. So don't blame me. I never spoke badly about you in front of them. Never. But they're not blind. They feel your absence. And I can't do anything about it." He remained silent on the other end of the line. Then he whispered, "I want to see them." I took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to say no. I wanted to protect my daughters from another disappointment. But another part knew they had the right to decide. "You can come Saturday afternoon. I'll ask you if you want to see them. If you say yes, you can stay for an hour. If you say no, you can leave and respect that. And let me make one thing clear. I'm not going to make it any easier for you. I'm not going to make any more excuses. If you want to be parents, you'll have to earn it back because you lost their trust. And now, rebuilding it is your problem, not mine." I hung up the phone, trembling, and when I saw my daughters playing in the living room, I thought, I did what I had to do. I protected them until now. Now, let him prove he's changed. If he's changed at all. When I hung up the phone, I stood in the kitchen for a few minutes, trying to organize my thoughts. I knew I needed to talk to the girls. I needed to ask them if they wanted to see their father. But at the same time, I was afraid of their answer. Afraid they would say yes and he would disappoint them again. Afraid they would say no and carry the guilt for the rest of their lives. It was an impossible decision, but it was theirs, not mine. That night, after dinner, I sat down with the two of them on the sofa. I took a deep breath and said, "Girls, your dad called. He wants to visit you on Saturday. But I want to know, do you want to see him?" My younger daughter, who was 7, looked at her older sister before answering. The older one, who was 10, became serious. "Is he going to disappear again, Mom?" The question broke my heart. Because she already knew. She had already learned the hard way that her father's promises weren't worth much. "I don't know, my love. I can't promise anything for him. But if you want to see him, he'll come. And if you don't, that's okay. There are no wrong answers here." They were silent for a while. The younger one whispered, "I want to see." And the older one sighed and said, "Me too, but only for an hour." I hugged them both, my heart breaking, because I knew they still had hope. Hope that their father would change, that he would finally be there for them. And I hoped they wouldn't be disappointed again. But I also knew I couldn't control him. I could only be there, by his side, to help him if he failed again. On Saturday, he arrived right on time. I opened the door, let him in, and stayed in the kitchen while he stayed in the living room with them. I didn't want to stay. I wanted to give them space, but I couldn't leave either. I stayed there, washing dishes that were already clean, just to have an excuse to be around. I listened to their voices, him asking about school, about his friends. At first, they answered with monosyllables, somewhat hesitantly. But after about 20 minutes, I heard a laugh, my youngest daughter's. And my heart sank in a strange way, because part of me was happy that she was laughing. But another part was angry. Angry that he showed up every now and then and became a hero, while I was there every day doing the hard work, and no one applauded. When the time was up, he said goodbye to the girls and went into the kitchen. He looked at me and whispered, "Thank you for letting me see them." I didn't reply. I simply opened the door. He left, and I locked it. I went back into the living room and my daughters were quiet, processing the situation. The older one looked at me and asked, "Mom, do you think he'll come back?" I sat down beside her, took her hand, and told her the truth. "I don't know, my love. But one thing I do know, I'll be here. Always. No matter what happens, I'll be here. And that will never change." She hugged me tightly, and I felt I had done the right thing. It wasn't about forgiving him. It wasn't about making his life easier. It was about giving my daughters the chance to decide, and protecting them from the consequences, whatever they might be. 2 weeks after that visit, my eldest daughter came to me with a question I knew she would ask, but I wasn't prepared to answer it. We were in the kitchen. She was helping me dry the dishes when she stopped, looked at me with those eyes that were too serious for her age, and asked, "Mom, why did Dad stop sending us money?" My heart stopped. I dried my hands slowly, took a deep breath, and turned to her. "Who told you that?" She shrugged. "I heard you talking on the phone with Grandma. And I remember there were times when we couldn't buy things because we didn't have any money. Was it because of him?" I could have lied. I could have made up an excuse, but I looked at that 10-year-old girl who had already been through so much, and I decided she deserved the truth. The truth, told as gently as I could. I sat down at the table, pulled her close, and said, "Yes, sweetheart. When your father and I separated, he was supposed to send you money every month to help you, but he stopped, and he went into a lot of debt. That's why we've been struggling." She was quiet, processing it, and then she asked the question that broke my heart. "Doesn't he care about us?" I cupped her face in my hands and looked her straight in the eyes. "He does care about you, in his own way, but he made bad choices. Choices that hurt you, and it's not your fault. It never was. You didn't do anything wrong. It's about him, about the choices he made." Tears streamed down her face, and I held her tight. "But why did we have to suffer because of his choices?" Her voice was muffled, filled with pain. And I had no answer, because she was right. It wasn't fair. It never was. "I don't know, my love, but I know you're not alone, and that we went through this together. And look at us now. We made it through. We're okay." That night, after falling asleep, the youngest came to see me. She had heard everything from the bedroom doorway. She climbed onto my lap, even though she was too big for that, and asked softly, "Mommy, are you mad at Daddy?" I thought carefully before answering. "I used to be really mad, yes, because he did things that hurt you. And it's my job to protect you. But you know what I learned? Holding a grudge only hurts me more. So I let justice take its course. And now I'm focused on taking care of you, on making us happy. Anger doesn't do any good anymore." She looked at me with those huge eyes and said, "I love you, Mommy. You're the best." And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. In the following days, I noticed my eldest daughter was different, more withdrawn, quieter, until one night, she came to me with a drawing. It was of 3 people, her sister, and me. Without their father, she handed it to me and said, "I drew our family." I looked at the drawing and my heart ached, not from sadness, but from pride, because she had understood. Family wasn't about who had left. It was about who had stayed. And looking at that simple drawing with 3 figures holding hands, I understood that I had succeeded. I hadn't protected them from all the pain. I hadn't been able to, but I had taught them to survive, to get back up. To know that, no matter what happened, they had each other, and they had me, always. Comment below if you've ever had to answer impossible questions from your children, if you've ever felt like you were failing when explaining why their father wasn't around, because these conversations are some of the hardest, and we need to know we're not alone. There's something I've started doing in the last few months, writing. Not for anyone to see, just for myself. To sort out everything that was still a mess inside me. And one of those nights, after putting the girls to bed, I sat down at the kitchen table, picked up an old notebook, and wrote a letter. A letter to myself. To the woman I was 3 years ago, when I found out he wasn't going to pay child support, when the world seemed to be falling apart, and I wanted her to know a few things. You'll think you can't. There will be nights when you look at your bank statement and panic. There will be days when your daughters ask you, "Why can't I?" And you'll have no answer other than, "Not right now." And it will hurt so much you'll want to give up. But let me tell you a secret, you are stronger than you think. You will make it through 3 years on your own. You will raise 2 amazing girls without their help. You will work. You will fight in court. You will spend sleepless nights worrying. And you will survive. What's more, you will win. He'll accuse you of things that will hurt you deeply. He'll say you turned the girls against him. That you're vindictive. That you exaggerated. And for a second, you might even doubt yourself. But then you'll remember, you spent 3 years asking, pleading, negotiating, and he chose to ignore you. So when you finally went to court, it wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. It was about securing your daughter's rights, and you will have to pay, not because you're a bad person, but because the law exists precisely for cases like this, for men who evade responsibility thinking there will be no consequences. Your daughters will ask you difficult questions. They'll want to know why their father isn't around, why he doesn't send them money if he cares about them. And you'll take a deep breath and answer truthfully, but without hatred. Because you'll understand that poisoning their hearts solves nothing. It only hurts more. You'll protect them in the best way you can, by giving them love, by being present, by providing them with stability, And they'll grow up knowing that no matter what happens, you're there, always. And that will be worth more than any money he has sent or failed to send. You too will get lost along the way. You'll forget who you are beyond being a mother. You'll look in the mirror and not recognize yourself. But then you'll have a moment of clarity and understand. You can be a devoted mother and still be a woman. You can fight for your children and still take care of yourself. The two don't cancel each other out. Then you'll cut your hair, buy new clothes, remember that there's still life inside you, and you'll begin to rebuild. Not the life you had before, a new life, stronger, more yours. Today, almost 4 years after it all began, I look back and see how far we've come. My daughters are 9 and 7. They are strong, intelligent, and loving. They know what adversity is, but they also know what resilience is. I have a better job. I pay my bills. I have savings. And I'm still striving for the remaining 22,000, but without giving up hope, with patience, because I've already proven I can do it. I'm not perfect. There are days when I still get tired, when the anger returns. When I ask myself, why me? But I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. And I know that no one can take that away from me. If you've made it this far, if you've watched this entire story from beginning to end, I want to ask you something. If you're a single mother, if you're struggling for child support that never arrives, if you've ever been accused of turning the children against their father while he doesn't do his part, please like this video. Comment below with your story, or simply say, I understand, because sometimes that's what we need to hear so we don't feel alone. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, because I'm going to continue sharing real stories of women who fight, who fall, but who get back up. And share this video. Send it to that friend who's going through something similar, to that mother who thinks she won't make it. Because she needs to know we can do it, we persevere, and we win, always. Thank you for staying until the end, from the bottom of my heart. See you in the next video.